And welcome back to another episode of the Ball Watchers podcast. I am your host, Evan Bloost, alongside my guest co-host for today, Tyler. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much. I could not be more excited to be here.
I know. I am thrilled. We are doing a Seahawks deep dive today. Of
How can
course,
you
you
not love
all
that?
know Tyler is a massive Seahawks fan,
Mm-hmm.
and he is in the building, replacing Joseph for today. We kind of owed him another episode off while he was in Italy, and also, scheduling. It's the summer. We're busy boys. We got
It
lots
happens.
going on. Exactly. So we're here with another episode, and we're going to do a Seahawks deep dive because I've wanted to do this for a while. I think that they're an interesting team, Tyler. This has been quite an interesting offseason, I think, from many perspectives, but I feel like you just don't see a lot of Super Bowl teams make the amount of changes that Seattle did over the course of the offseason. Obviously, lots of Super Bowl teams lose head coaches, things like that, but you don't see a lot of Super Bowl teams lose as many key pieces as Seattle did over the course of free agency, which is something we'll get into here, but overall I just think they're a very interesting team going into this or going through this offseason and going into next season.
I agree, and you make a good point with them losing. Holy cow, losing some key pieces. Excuse me, like Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Kenneth Walker is the number one that comes to my mind. Now, obviously, if you have a good enough offensive line and scheme, any running back can do decent. But Kenneth Walker is such a special talent that we're gonna have to see how they address that.
Yeah, I think that one was a shocker. Obviously, the price tag was one of those things where it's a little bit more understandable for Seattle to not want to pay Kenneth Walker $15 million, especially when they also had Zach Charbonnet there. But it gets a little more complicated because Zach Charbonnet tears his ACL in the divisional round of the playoffs the season before. So you don't know when exactly he's coming back, and then it felt like at the end of the day it forced their hand a little bit in the NFL draft, but you're hoping Charbonnet's back for week 1, and at the same time, I think Kenneth Walker, while he was a big loss, it explains away. I think the one that's really surprising to me, honestly, was Kobe Bryant. I feel like he was such a huge part of Mike McDonald's defense last season that I was really surprised that they let him go, especially for what was, in my opinion, at least a fairly reasonable contract. I think he got like $12 million or something from the Bears. It just seemed like it wasn't an overpay by the Bears, and it felt like someone who was quite important to Seattle's defense last season.
Yeah, I had a hard time understanding that one as well because, man, I love watching Kobe play. He is a dog. He is so good, and he fits the scheme so well. Um, the one thing that comes to mind when it came to his contract negotiations was, now obviously we're not behind the scenes with the front office or anything, so we don't know for sure. But I felt like maybe he thought it was a time for a change. Like, you got your ring, you've been playing there for 4 years, and maybe you're just not super satisfied with the front office, teammates, whatever it might be, just looking for a change. But at the same time, I don't know, if it were me, if I just won a Super Bowl with that team, I'd be doing everything I can to stay around because I want more.
Exactly. And it's not like he got, well, obviously got a contract, like his value went up a lot, and he got a big contract in terms of value compared to his previous one, but that was also his rookie contract and then his second contract.
So.
Yeah. So anyone was going to get that, and I feel like, I don't know, I just don't really understand why Seattle chose to let him go because, and even from Kobe Bryant's perspective, he was the starting safety on this team. It was him and Julian Love who were the starting safeties. Exactly. And Eamon Worry was very much the nickel player in this defense. He wasn't playing a lot of deep safety the way Kobe Bryant was, and the way Mike McDonald's defense works is everyone needs to be versatile, and it just felt like Kobe Bryant was that versatile piece that they just lost at this point because you don't have a guy who can play. He was a corner in college, and he was a good corner in college. He won the award for best corner in college, and he didn't and that gives him that ability to cover tight ends and come down into the box, cover running backs, things like that. And it just seemed like a guy who made a ton of plays. Even in the Super Bowl, he was almost headhunting. He was
Oh,
trying to
he
lay
was
at people out the
he was
entire
trying to knock
Super
people
Bowl.
out.
Exactly. And he did that all season. He was a guy, he's always hit hard. It just surprised me. It felt like a very much a Mike McDonald guy that they
Yeah.
let out the door.
One of my favorite things about Kobe Bryant over the years is how many times he's been able to get to a tackle either first
Mm-hmm.
or second and punch the ball out. Like he has done, especially in his rookie season, I found the most. It's kind of
Yeah.
like tapered off since then. But in his rookie season, I think he had what 4 or 5 forced fumbles,
Yeah.
and he's done it at least 3 or 4 times in the seasons since. So like, and you
Mm-hmm.
already know Mike McDonald loves a good turnover
Exactly.
any single chance he can get. So yeah, that one confused me as well. But you know what? Happy for the man. $12 million a year.
Yeah.
That's a great contract. Chicago's a good city, good team.
Yeah.
So can't be too mad about it. And I also think it speaks volumes about Ty Okada and how much trust they have in him to lead the. I forget if Kobe's a strong safety or free safety.
Who knows? It doesn't even matter.
Doesn't really
to
matter.
Be honest.
But I think it speaks volumes to Ty Okada because, you know, when he did come into play, he played over 700 snaps for the Seahawks last year, Ty Okada. And now he may not be a turnover machine, but he is a very consistent tackler and a
Mhm.
guy who reads run blocking extremely well. And so I was always impressed with that. So, you know, maybe it won't be all that bad, but maybe we'll have one of the exciting whites on our team. But
For once.
I guess we'll see.
It's kind of confusing because I think, well, it's not confusing. I wonder what it's going to look like. Is Nick Eamon-Wari going to play a lot more off ball and out of the box next season? Like, are they going to bring him up, put Witherspoon back at that nickel spot? But there's question marks at cornerback, and we can get to that in a second. But I feel like you don't necessarily like. It was such a good depth piece, and I don't know. I guess it really is that you're hoping Ty Okada, and you expect Ty Okada to do what Kobe Bryant did last season for significantly less money, because that's one of the things is Seattle is right up against the cap right now. They have weirdly $25 million in cap room this season still available, but they only have, I think, 29 million or something going into next season, and they do still have to pay Devin Witherspoon. Byron Murphy's contract's going to be coming up
I
soon.
forgot about that one.
Sam Darnold effectively could get a contract extension as early as next offseason, I would say, as well, because he'll only have 1 year left on his deal at that point, and I don't know if I don't think he'll have any guaranteed money left either. So
No, and if he keeps playing the way he's been playing, I mean, like, why not?
yeah,
Don't
I
get me
mean
wrong.
he's worth more than $100 million if
Yeah.
he plays the way he's playing. So
Like, don't get me wrong. When I look at that quarterback depth chart, do I want to see Jalen Milroe play?
yes,
Yes. But if we can keep getting good production out of Sammy, why not?
yeah.
What's wrong with
Milroe's a
that?
3rd-round pick. It was definitely a flyer. I mean, who knows what he can be, but I truly don't think he'll surpass Sam Darnold.
No,
Excuse me, while he's on the team.
I think it could be similar. No, I'm not going to say for sure, but similar to like a Jordan Love type situation where if in like 2 or 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
Sam's getting into his 30s, Milrose made a lot of strides in practice, really impressing the coaching staff. Maybe you give him a shot, but I'd say for the next 2 or 3 years, easily, this is Sam Darnold's team.
Yeah, that's a big question mark. Is will Jalen Milroe? I don't know if that guy. He is that guy. I mean, he's a 3rd-round pick for a reason. He's incredibly athletic, but he definitely had some accuracy issues in college and turnover issues in college. But a couple more free agents they lost. Tariq Woolen is another one that I think made sense. He just never was really a fit with the Seahawks, especially under Mike McDonald. He's not a physical corner who's a great tackler, and I think that Mike McDonald's scheme calls for your outside corners to be very physical on the ball, good tacklers in the run game, just because there's a lot of disguised schemes. You have to give your guys time to get to their spots. So your corners have to be very physical. And while Tariq Woolen is a fantastic athlete, I just don't think he fit the scheme. There's definitely some drama. In my opinion, at least, the stuff in the playoffs was a bit overblown. Tariq Woolen getting the taunting call and then making the touchdown saving play right after. I don't think that was really like the final nail in the coffin. It just felt like it was a tumultuous season. He was benched for points of the season for Josh Jobe. He would return to the lineup. I think overall he just wasn't a fit for Mike McDonald's defense, and that one made sense as much as it was sad to see him go, just because again another like successful late round pick that really worked out for Seattle, but he wasn't a fit.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like he fit in so much more in the Pete Carroll style of defense that they played. Now, granted, that defense wasn't great,
No,
but his
it was
best
pretty awful.
his best seasons in the NFL have come when he was playing under Pete Carroll, and I think his play style just fit what Pete was getting the Seahawks to do so much better. And you're right, you make a great point with Mike McDonald's wanting some physical corners. That's why he loves Devin Witherspoon.
Exactly.
And even though Josh Jobe is a little guy, he gets after.
And he's a good tackler.
And he's a great tackler. I actually, funny enough, I had the pleasure of flying down to Washington in April and talking to Mike McDonald for a little bit. Now, it wasn't one-on-one, as much as I wish. I love that guy.
No, you should have made it sound like that. That's he wanted you to come down. He flew you down to Seattle.
But he talked for about 2 hours, and I want to say 40 minutes of that was strictly about corners.
Wow.
And how much he loves corners that come down, read the run, tackle and make plays, get sacks. And Tariq's just not that guy.
No.
Like, don't get me wrong, he is a great cover corner. Like, I'd say top 15, I think, statistically, cover corner in terms of man coverage, I think. I don't know about zone coverage. I know man is pretty good. But, yeah, he needs to be in a system where they run a lot of man coverage, and Mike just runs pretty much strictly zone.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's just not his style of football. He's a very slender individual, and it's hard to be
I'm pretty
physical.
Skinny, and I think I'm thicker than him.
Yeah, exactly. He might be a little taller than you. Probably not by
6'4".
much. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, when you run a 4.3, you can make up for a lot. But it's just not. You want him more as that off-ball, weak side kind of corner where he can play 5 yards off and make plays that way. But that's not how Mike McDonald's scheme works. So, and that one made sense to me. I think he's a much better fit on the Eagles. Although I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Vic Fangio's scheme also kind of demands more physical corners. But then you also look at a guy like Darius Slay. There's a lot of plays to be made downfield. So he'll probably fit better as the cornerback too in Philadelphia. The last guy they lose, or major guy at least they lose in free agency, is Boye Mafe. But for me, this one made a ton of sense. Again, he was a rotational pass rusher. He barely played last season, and he got $25 million from the Bengals. I don't really see...
Which was crazy.
I know. I was shocked. I mean, he's a guy who, I think he put up 10 sacks one season, or 8 sacks, something like that. So
I think it was 8, but this past season he only had 2.
Yes. He barely played. Derek Hall completely took over that starting role from Boye Mafe. And again, Boye Mafe doesn't really fit Mike McDonald's scheme. He's a pure pass rusher. He's not great in the run game. Again, just a smaller guy, but the Bengals just need anything at this point at the pass rushing position.
Yes.
And it makes a lot more sense to have a guy like Boye Mafe in that defense and just with what the Bengals needed, and especially considering that contract.
And, like, you make a good point. Like, Boye is not some, like, top-tier edge rusher like that people would just know by name. But when you look at him going to the Bengals and then you pair that up with Dexter Lawrence, which the Bengals just traded for, I think it was like, a month ago?
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, that's already a significant upgrade to their defensive line. So I'm happy for Cincinnati. Now, I love Boye Mafe. He's one of my favorite players. So seeing him go was a little bit sad. But it does make sense. Evan is correct. It made a lot of sense. Just the production and the way he fit the defense.
They have the depth too. Like, he wasn't ever gonna get enough snaps, I think, to make it worth it for Seattle to re-sign him. And if he could get that money on the open market, it makes a ton of sense. Moving to free agency signings, the Seahawks. This is pretty common. This is not like a just this year thing. They're not a very active team in free agency. They don't make a lot of big splash signings. Like, thinking back over the last few years, I feel like the most like notable signing was when they signed Jadeveon Clowney, like,
I knew you guys who you were
5 years ago. I can't think of anything more notable, to be honest, that they did, especially like early in free agency. And I don't even think that was that early in free agency. But
no, most of their moves that they do for their team come through trades, either at the trade deadline or in the off season.
Internal signings a lot as well.
Yeah, a lot of internal signings and guys that have really blossomed under their coaching staff, and they're just trying to keep around. So there's not really too much of a need to go out and sign anybody crazy. Now, if they were to go out and sign somebody like top tier, would I be upset?
No.
No, not at all. But I don't think there's like a glaring need for it really.
Yeah.
They believe in what they got in house and what they can do with the draft and um, finding little pieces here and there in free agency that are just going to help them just enough that they can rotate in and out so guys aren't getting too tired. And if there's one hurt, they can always have another one. So really, yeah,
Yeah, they
them,
take a lot of flyers in free agency. I
they
feel
sure do.
like it's those guys who you can get for cheap, and maybe they were good at one point, or they were a high pick, and you hope they can figure it out. 90% of the time, I feel like it doesn't work out, but
You know what? Those
it's
10% of the time
exactly
is extremely
like
valuable.
DeMarcus Lawrence last year, fantastic
Exactly.
signing. So it happens. I mean, Rashid Shaheed, I thought was a bit of a head scratcher. I think in a perfect world, ignoring Kenneth Walker, taking him out of the equation, I think re-signing Kobe Bryant makes a lot more sense than re-signing Rashid Shaheed, who also got more money. I think he got like 17 million compared to Kobe Bryant's 12. But that was an interesting move in my opinion. While he was very valuable in terms of the receiving game, or not the receiving game, the return game, he didn't do anything in the receiving game. He had like less than 200 yards, I think, total across however like 8 or 10 games he played with Seattle. Like that is not a $17 million receiver. And while he was electric in that punt return game, I just thought, and I talked about this when it happened, but Torrey Horton was doing all of that, and it felt like he was the next guy up. And while having depth at receiver is important, I think there's other guys that they could have targeted for significantly cheaper than re-signing Rashid Shaheed to this deal, unless they're really going to change how he's used. Because if he's going to be like he was on the Saints for a couple years and catching 70-yard touchdowns, then that makes a ton of sense. But they really didn't throw to him deep down the field, except for the only time I can think of was in the divisional or not the wild card
It was
round,
the NFC
the conference
Championship.
championship game, that 50-yard pass on third down. But other than that, I can't think of a deep pass that he caught for Seattle.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think part of the reason that happened throughout the season is I think it's really hard for a player to get traded mid-season and then relearn everything. You know, when you're in the full swing of things, like you show up on Tuesday to the building, hey, we got a game on Sunday, you better be ready.
Yeah.
And so I think him and Sam Darnold just didn't have quite the chemistry that they could have had if he were on the team in the offseason. Because we saw how much that improved with JSN. Now, he was a great receiver last year, but when you give him a full offseason together, Sam's a better quarterback than Geno. It's like that's what happens.
Yeah,
And so I feel like I love Shaheed. I'm so happy with the re-signing.
that's fair.
Um, not only because he is electric in the return game, because he had what 3 return touchdowns,
At
1
least.
punt and 2 kick returns,
Yeah,
I think.
I think that's right. Two in the
Um,
playoffs, too.
yeah, 2 in the playoffs, which is invaluable.
Yeah.
So I love it. And even though Torrey Horton can return, and he had that 95-yard punt return against the Saints in Week 3, that was incredibly impressive. I was jumping out of my seat when I saw that, especially because I'm just happy for a rookie.
Yeah.
But I think if you can pair both of those guys up, if you're going to have like 2 return men, perhaps, um, no matter which way you kick it,
Yeah.
it's a bad decision. And let's say one of them were to get hurt, you still have another good return guy. And if you wanted to, let's say, almost like designate Shaheed as to more of a returner than as a receiver, okay, that's not worth 17 million. But it does make me happy that that means Torrey Horton's going to get more opportunity, and he doesn't cost very much.
No.
I think he was a 4th or 5th round pick, so he's only making maybe a million or two. I don't
Yeah.
know how contracts
Pretty
work.
low. Me neither. But it's not as much for
So,
sure.
like, I like it. I love Shaheed, and I think that with a full off season of building chemistry with Sam Darnold, he will actually become a good part of that receiving game.
Yeah.
Because I felt, especially in the Super Bowl, when they went deep to Shaheed twice, I felt that Sam was trying to, like, he was almost overestimating how fast Shaheed is because he is crazy fast. So I think he was just letting it rip, and he overthrew him twice. And so, like, yes, He is super speedy. You got to just like dial in
Yeah,
those little things here and there, and they'll understand each other more, and
the chemistry.
he'll
I
get a
like that.
he'll get a better understanding of the playbook and how the coaches do things. So I think if I had to guess, you know what? I'm just gonna make a prediction.
I love it.
810 yards
810 yards.
for
You know what?
Shaheed,
That's fair. I think I honestly either Torrey Horton or Rashid Shaheed, but one of them is probably going to overtake Cooper Cup for receiving yards. I don't
which I
really
wouldn't
think.
be mad at as much
No,
as I love Cup.
exactly. It's like he's he's in the tail end of his career here, so I don't think
And you
it's a
can bring
crazy
him in
thing
on
to say.
third down packages,
Mhm.
stuff like that, because he's a reliable or pass catcher. But
Yeah,
he's not as quick as he
100%.
used to be. So
He's also a good blocker, I think. Still, so
fantastic blocker.
you still want to keep him in there. Rashid Shaheed's not going to be able to do that. Torrey Horton honestly isn't either. So
No,
they're smaller guys, but I do like it from the sense that now you're four deep at receiver. You have JSN, you have Cup, you have Shaheed, you have Horton, and I feel like that's something that Seattle has not had in a very long time. Even outside of Metcalf and Lockett, it has been a crapshoot pretty
Yes.
much until they drafted JSN. I mean, you had like David Moore had like 700 yards one year. Freddie Swain,
I was just about to bring him up.
classic,
I
but
love
like
Freddie Swain.
their third receiver was always like, who is this guy? Like anyone who wasn't a Seahawks
Remember
fan
when
had
it was
no
Marquise
idea.
Goodwin?
Oh man, exactly. That was like 32-year-old Marquise Goodwin too.
Yes.
That wasn't even like prime Marquise Goodwin.
No.
So that was after I think he left the NFL to try to get onto the Olympic track team.
And then I think he came back the year after, or like after his tryouts.
Yeah, exactly.
And he
like,
had that one super nice touchdown against LA, the Chargers.
mm,
But after that, no.
yeah, exactly.
Not a whole lot.
Total crapshoot. They have four guys at this point that I think you are comfortable getting in the game. Not to mention Jake Bobo, to be
How can I
honest, because
forget
he's a
Jake
guy,
Bobo?
the most reliable receiver possibly of all time. So
Speaking of which, congratulations to Jake Bobo. He got married, I think, a day ago.
that he
Love
did.
that for my guy.
Congratulations.
And
Oh,
you're right. He is the best receiver ever.
yeah,
I love
most
Jake Bobo.
reliable, I would say. Just the most unsuspecting guy. It does suck though. I feel like this guy's just never going to get playing time, but he's damn good when he's out there.
That is true. And just like Cup and JSN, fantastic blocker.
Yeah.
Great run blocker.
I mean, put those guys out there and just run the rock. Some other moves here. Emmanuel Wilson, they signed from the Packers, which I actually loved a lot. I also thought this was before they signed Jadarian Price, but I felt like Emmanuel Wilson could shoulder the load until Charbonnet came back, just because I anticipate he'll miss a few weeks to start the season, but honestly, I think he could be back by week 4. So you have a few games of Emmanuel Wilson, and then Charbonnet's taking over, but obviously that didn't become the case. Emmanuel Wilson, cheap, a good depth option here. But honestly, after drafting Jadarian Price, I think that move makes a little bit less sense because you did have guys like George Holani who played really well for Seattle last year in spots. Other than that, nothing really crazy. Dante Fowler, great rotational edge rushers.
I like that as a replacement for Mafe.
Me too. I think he's just a veteran guy. He knows what he's doing. Not going to cost a lot of money. Get
Better
him on a
run
one-year
defender,
deal.
more sack production.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. And then other than that, Rodney Thomas at safety, Noah Igbenogany, former first-round pick of the Dolphins many years ago at this point. But I think this is what got interesting is it's just like they didn't really sign anyone, which is not surprising, like we said, but the cornerback depth is a little bit of a concern, and I think that in the draft, spending a first-round pick on Jadarian Price, they didn't address the cornerback position in the offseason. I am a little concerned about their depth at the cornerback position because they need some of these guys that they drafted a little bit later, like a Julian Neal and a Michael Dansby, Andre Fuller. 3 cornerbacks drafted, all in the third round or later, though, to step up because it is Devin Witherspoon, Josh Jobe, and a whole lot of question marks at this moment.
Nehemiah Pritchett. My
Question
enemy.
mark.
I do not like Nehemiah Pritchett. But yeah, you're right. It is a big question mark going into this going into this season for this team. And while I'm not the most comfortable with the way it currently stands, mostly because the rookies are completely unproven, they haven't stepped on the field yet. I really am a big fan of Julian Neal.
He seems like a dog.
I
He
like
seems like a
Julian
Mike
Neal.
McDonald cornerback.
Yes, he
Speaking of
does.
Mike McDonald cornerbacks.
And I think he's a bigger dude too. I think he's like 6'1", 200. So like not the biggest corner you've ever seen, but like a guy who's going to come downhill
He hits
and
hard.
like hit you. And from what I've seen in his tape in college, he is actually like an exceptional covering cornerback. Now, obviously, the talent in the NFL is significantly better, and he's probably going to have a wake up call here or
Mm-hmm.
there. But I think when you have a coach like Mike McDonald, why not?
Yeah.
Like, that kid is going to get the best coaching and experience of his life playing on this team, and I don't think he could have been in a better situation. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Julian. I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's just like you don't know what you have in a third round pick a lot of the time, and I think that that's where it gets concerning because
Mm-hmm.
like the one thing, to be fair, I will give credit to two things here. Number one, Mike McDonald's or defensive scheme only really requires two cornerbacks
Yeah.
most of the time. Like it's really just Witherspoon, Woolen, or it was one of Witherspoon and then Woolen or Job on the field.
Yeah.
So like they don't need to be three deep at cornerback because they rarely play with three cornerbacks on the field. It's just if something happens to Josh Jobe, there is not a lot of depth there. You're relying on a third round rookie to really be your number two cornerback in this system. And I just thought that I feel like there was guys at the end of that first round, especially with how it shook out, that made a ton of sense to draft. I also think a guy like Jermod McCoy, while he wouldn't have necessarily been a solution that's this season, the Seahawks felt like a perfect team to draft him in the third or the fourth round where they don't they're going to be good next year regardless. They don't need him to be there, but then you get really a potential like number one level cornerback. So I thought that was interesting that they didn't really address the cornerback position until the third round, especially because they drafted Bud Clark as well in the second round. So I guess that's a guy who could also start at safety. It feels like their safety room is very full and their cornerback room's
Yeah, they
not.
got it mixed up a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Maybe Bud Clark will come down and play. Who knows? Who really
I
knows what's going to happen?
I honestly wouldn't mind that. Like I know Bud Clark's not a corner or anything,
He's long.
but from what I've seen, the guy like just somehow ends up with
Yeah.
the ball in his hands.
Versatile. And I think that's the biggest thing in Mike McDonald's defense is just versatility. And they did draft for that, I think, especially on defense. And just the way they've signed people is Witherspoon can play in the slot. He can play outside. Eamon Worry can play anywhere, basically. He can play linebacker. He can play like nickel. He can play deep safety. He can do whatever. He's very athletic as well. Then you have a guy like Julian Neal, who again is just fits that like mentality of what Mike McDonald wants. The other thing I just want to point out here is they're banking on John Schneider, and John Schneider is running this team. I feel like in the Pete Carroll era, it was much more of a partnership, if not Pete Carroll having a lot of the final say on pieces, but it feels truly like John Schneider is running this team, and what he says goes from a personnel standpoint, and that's what you're seeing here is you're cutting or not cutting costs necessarily, but you're banking on your ability to draft talent in the middle rounds. You're banking on your ability to rehab players who have potentially been good at other points in their career but are not at that level that they once were. You're banking on just development in general for your guys.
Yeah.
So I do feel like John Schneider has definitely earned that trust, especially if you look back at the past few years. I mean, the 2022 draft, JSN, Witherspoon, fantastic draft. The Tariq Woolen draft as well. You get Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen
I think they got
in that
Mafe
one.
in that draft.
Mafe as well. That's a great draft. I mean, last year's draft as well was fantastic. You get Nick Eamon-Worry, you get Gray Zabel, two key pieces to that Super Bowl team. So it makes a ton of sense to me. The other thing that was a bit of a shock, in my opinion, was they really didn't. We'll move on to the draft here. There's a few things I want to touch on here, but they really didn't address the offensive line in free agency or in the draft. They re-signed Josh Jones, who was there, but he's more of a tackle than a guard and is not a starter. But considering maybe the Anthony Bradford hatred was overblown, but when you watch that guy play, it was like how is John Schneider and Mike McDonald not watching this film and being like, we got to do something else? And they draft Bo Stevens out of Iowa, I believe, in the third or fourth round, but like a fourth round pick. I guess Anthony Bradford was like a fifth round pick, so it's possible, but I'm surprised it wasn't a bigger like point of emphasis because going into free agency in the draft, at least in my opinion, I wasn't too worried about the running back situation. I was like, you need to get a guard and you need to get a corner, and they didn't really prioritize either.
No, and I agree. It was kind of strange because it's not so much of a glaring need for them anymore, but I mean, how can you say no to another good offensive lineman?
Yeah, and
Right?
also just like watch Anthony Bradford's, I guess, lowlights.
Yeah,
Like
if you
he
go,
just stands around and looks at
if
things.
you go on TikTok, there's a guy who made a series every
Amazing.
single week, and I'm pretty sure it has 8 parts.
At least,
And that's okay. Anthony Bradford,
including the Super Bowl. He made one about the Super
yeah,
Bowl.
he did.
Like it's amazing when you watch those plays and you zero in on Anthony Bradford. You're like, it's actually amazing they made the Super Bowl because they basically played with 4 offensive linemen half the time
Pretty
because
much.
he would lose his assignment and then he just stand there. Like he doesn't even like lose and then work up field. He just loses and stops.
Yeah,
It's
like
insane.
the thing with Anthony Bradford that gets me is he has really, really low rock bottoms, and then all of a sudden he'll pull out the nicest play you've ever seen in your
Yeah.
life for one play. Like
How does he do that though? It's
my
amazing.
mind goes to the Carolina Panthers game, and I think Kenneth Walker was in the game at the time. They were running toss to the right, and Anthony Bradford with one arm threw Derek Brown to the ground.
Dang.
And it was like, that is a top 5 defensive tackle in
Yeah.
the NFL, and you just like picked him up and like manhandled him with one hand. But then the very next play, you're going to look like a 5-year-old who
Yeah.
doesn't know where they are or what they're doing, and is just kind of hanging out.
The amount of times he's watching Sam Darnold throw the football is impressive.
You know,
You should never be facing your quarterback as an offensive lineman
yes.
unless they scored a touchdown or something.
As you know, Evan, I coach high school football.
Yes.
The number one thing we drill into our offensive lineman's head is if you are looking at the quarterback, you have messed up.
Yeah,
Like,
something is wrong.
horrifically.
Something is wrong.
really, really bad. And he does that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, exactly. And I would also say, as an I played. I mean, I don't have extensive experience as a football player in general, but I played offensive line for a year, and I mean, I even remember our coach is like, if you lose, find someone else to hit.
Yes,
like
it doesn't matter
at the
who it
end
is.
of the day. And I mean, that's any position really. And he just stands there. He's like, oh shit, my guy's gone.
He almost like, I swear, there's been a couple times where he'll like throw his arms up and be like
Yeah.
actually almost asking like what happened.
And then he's in half the time. He's also somehow in the way.
Yes. Oh
Like
my
he
goodness, he's
stands
always
there,
in
but
the
then
way.
he's in the way of like Kenneth Walker or whatever, trying to get upfield, and it's like, how are you? By not doing anything, you're not only like not helping, but you're actively like hurting the team.
Yeah,
It's
you're
amazing.
like making things worse.
Yeah.
Single-handedly.
Oh, it's bad. I'm glad we got to talk about this. We haven't had a platform recently.
No, but you know what? Maybe
He's still there.
I say this every year. Maybe this is the year he plays okay football.
Yeah, you never know. And I mean, like, to be fair, he is huge. He is a massive
Massive.
guy. He has super long arms. Like physically, he has the tools. It's just like sometimes he doesn't move. He's not the most fluid mover, and you can see
No.
that. And maybe Bo Stevens will beat him out. I mean, the fact that
Yeah, you never know.
he's a 4th-round pick, it's not out of the question. Iowa offensive linemen too are kind of just like gritty
They just breed
gritty
offensive
boys.
linemen.
Exactly. So it's definitely a possibility. I definitely think that I would just say his starting spot is not secure by any means.
I don't
Even
know if it ever has been,
no.
but it's just
No.
kind of like that's all they have.
Yeah. Christian Haynes not working out really helped him.
No.
Jalen
Christian Haynes getting
Sundell.
hurt really helped
Yeah.
him too. That's like a double whammy for Haynes.
But also Haynes just like never really impressed
never
anyone.
really
He
all
was
that
not that
good.
good. And then Sundell moved to center, which
Mhm.
also helped him. So he's had luck on his side so far in his career,
It's
but
time
we'll
for
see.
That to end.
We'll see. I'm just surprised that it wasn't more like even in the second round. I'm surprised they didn't try to pick someone up because
Yeah.
there's a couple guys like Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon
Yep.
fell to the Jaguars. That would have made a ton of sense for Seattle. They don't end up biting the bullet on that one, I guess. But they will start at the top of the draft here too with Jadarian Price because this was a big question mark in my opinion. I don't see the vision here, and while I am excited to have him on the team, I think it's still a big question mark because why do you number one, why do you draft a running back in the first round in the first place in this draft? Because while, yes, Charbonnet's missing time, you still have Charbonnet. He's under contract. He has been fantastic when he's gotten opportunities to be the starter. It didn't make sense to draft another because Charbonnet was a second round pick, Kenneth Walker's a second round pick, now Jadarian Price is a first round pick. Like, that's a lot of high capital draft picks on running backs when, in my opinion, like, they could have figured it out with an Emmanuel Wilson in this draft. I also think Charbonnet, like I said, I don't think he would have missed a lot of time. And then you spend this massive pick on Jadarian Price. How does it work when Charbonnet comes back? Like, how is that going to look?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really similar to what they did last year with Kenneth Walker, where it's almost like a bit of a timeshare between the two. And then using those first couple weeks when Charbonnet's out to really see
Yeah.
what Price can do, which I don't think is a bad idea, barring him getting injured. But Price is a tough guy. Like, he's 5'11.
Yeah.
I think he said 210 pounds. So, like, he's not some little guy that's just going to get bounced around in the pocket or anything like that when he gets into contact with the defensive line. Um, yeah, I'm also really excited to see Price on draft night. I couldn't agree more. I was so puzzled by the pick.
Yeah.
I don't think I said anything for about 5 minutes. It was just kind
It
of
was bad.
silence
It
in
was a
my
bad
living
pick.
room because I mean I was wanting a corner. That's
And
what
there
I
were
was wanting.
good corners on the board. Like, Colton Hood was still available at the end of the first round.
Terrell
there.
was there.
Yeah, AJ Terrell was still there. Like, there were guys who you would have been comfortable taking in the first round, and they go with a running back where, honestly, it would have, in my opinion at least, made a ton more sense to draft a guy like a Jonah Coleman in the fourth or the fifth round,
Love Jonah Coleman.
take a corner in the first round. You have Emmanuel Wilson, George Halani, Jonah Coleman, who can figure out whatever and
can just get you
carry
by.
the load. Exactly. And you have a solid offensive line. Like, I think it would have worked. And then Charbonnet comes back and is your workhorse once he's back from injury. You also have the depth to allow him a bit of time to load manage over the course of the start of the season when he comes back. So I just don't really understand why they made the decision they did to draft Jadarian Price. And while I am excited to have him on the team. I think he's a great player. He's a very exciting running back coming out of college. It just, like, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that running back just didn't feel like a need.
No, and like I'm
At least
also
that dire of a need.
yeah. Like, do you feel super comfortable with the plethora of running backs that you have on that roster and then kind of like plugging them in over and over and being like, okay, are you going to work? Okay, are you going to work? Like, I get you want some like security there with one guy that's going to do it, but yeah, I don't know. I know he had a really high grade on him coming into the draft, and he probably wasn't going to fall too far into the second round
No.
before somebody drafted him. But yeah, I was confused by the pick, and I agree with you. I'm super excited to see what he's going to do this year. I mean, come on, the Price is Right.
Yeah.
That's a great nickname.
That is a
Can't go wrong. If you have a great nickname, you're bound to be a good
Yeah.
player. But from everything I've seen and read about him in camp, it's that he's been really impressive so far. And I get it's not really against a real defense, and you're just kind of going on air or against your own defense when you're not really hitting. But he has, from what I've seen, a little bit of like surprising speed.
Yeah.
Like,
He's also big. He's a big guy.
Big dude. And when you watch his highlights in college, like, there's every once in a while where he'll come up to a group of defenders and all of a sudden he's busted out of it and he's running 40 yards for a touchdown. So it's kind of like, how did you do that? But and I think the one thing that hurt him the most coming into the draft was his loyalty to Notre Dame and being stuck behind Jeremiah Love. Because I watched the interview with him, I forget when it was. It was a couple months ago, right after the draft. And he had a ton of offers to go to SEC schools, Big Ten schools, and be the starter. But he really wanted to stick at Notre Dame. And unfortunately, that came with being the number 2 guy, but he was all right with that. So
He was still great. I think he
He
still
was
had, what,
awesome.
700 yards last year or
Yeah.
something? Like,
So I feel like maybe he did fly under their radar a little bit, and maybe we're completely way off base by saying he was a reach in like the first round. and like stuff like that. Maybe he'll surprise us. But I guess that's the thing with the draft is why it's so
Mm.
exciting because you really don't know.
No, exactly. I mean, I think for me, I don't think it was a reach. It was more just like the
Yeah,
position didn't make
that wasn't
sense.
the right word to use.
Regardless of price, it was just like it didn't make sense for Seattle, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's more what I meant. My bad.
All good. The one thing I will say is it does set up, I think, a potentially likely scenario where Charbonnet does not get re-signed next off season,
I would
and they
hate
just
that.
roll with Price. But I mean, I think that's what's going to happen. I think you still have to pay Withers. Like I said, Witherspoon and Murphy are still up for contracts here, and I think that they're probably going, well, we can't afford to pay Charbonnet next season with these coming up. Maybe they're looking to the future, and if that's the case, it does make more sense. It's just that I think they could have figured it out a different way. I also
Yeah.
don't like. I don't know. Charbonnet does not command a ton of money because he's never been the number one guy.
Nope.
He's always going to be coming off an injury next season. He's probably not going to play the whole season, and it'll take some time to ramp back up. Like, I feel like he would not command a lot of money on the open market. Like, Tyler Algier feels like probably
similar.
around what he would get at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
like, Charbonnet, I don't know. I think it would have been pretty reasonable to bring him back, and now you're paying Jadarian Price first round pick money anyways, which might have
Yeah.
been what you had to pay Charbonnet anyways. Granted, end of the first round is much different than the start of the first round, but
Yes.
still a lot of money for a
Yeah.
running back, especially. Any other thoughts on our draft, Tyler?
I was just gonna touch on one more thing with the Jadarian Price and Charbonnet, and it goes back to when you said that you feel like maybe they're setting it up so that they don't have to re-sign Charbonnet. As much as I love Charbonnet, I wouldn't be the most mad about that. Yes, he's a great running back. Yes, he brings a lot of value to this team, especially if they were in the case of injuries, like when Kenneth Walker was hurt the last couple of years. Like he really stepped in and
Mm-hmm.
like was a good running back, and like he like drags people and runs people. Like he's a big, hard hitting, good running back. But the one thing I would hate to see the most with him being let go is if they just let him walk in free agency, like they did with Kenneth Walker and like they did with like Tariq Woolen. Like
Yeah.
I feel like there's a time and a place for that when you can just let a guy walk and be like, okay, see you later. Our time is done. If they're gonna get rid of him and that's really their plan, I want something back for him. Trade him, please. Give me a third round pick.
Yeah. At the trade deadline or something. I just like, I don't know. Seattle's not really that team. They
No.
don't dump a lot of players at the trade deadline. They're usually picking guys up. But
Yeah.
because Woolen, I feel like, well, even Mafe was rumored at the trade deadline, and they didn't give up
Mafe
on
was
him. And that
rumored
would have
for a
been
long
another
time.
guy who you could have gotten decent draft capital back for, and also didn't really play for you.
I remember the Patriots had made an offer to the Seahawks for Boye Mafe mid season.
That would have been funny.
Wouldn't that been hilarious?
Oh man, alternate universe.
Mm.
Next up, coaching. Obviously, Seattle loses Clint Kubiak, who was a fantastic offensive coordinator for them last season. He is now the head coach of the Raiders, and they've signed 49ers tight end coach slash run game coordinator Brian Fleury as a new OC, also coming out of the Shanahan system, much like Clint Kubiak. I don't know this, but I'm assuming him and Clint Kubiak have some sort of relationship,
They
which
do,
is
yes.
why this makes sense. Obviously, they have the Shanahan connection, but I'm assuming they wouldn't have signed a pretty relatively unknown guy without some sort of reference from Kubiak. I think it's very unknown. Obviously, the 49ers have had one of the better run games and run schemes for many, many years under Shanahan, and I like bringing in a guy who targets the run game. But I want to know your thoughts, Tyler. You're a big you're a coach. You're a big offensive guy. I'm curious what you think of Brian Fleury and what you've read and seen.
I do dream to be a coach in the NFL one day, so I pay a lot of attention
Yes,
to
you do.
coaching. I love the hire. Now, yes, it's really unknown because he's never actually been an offensive coordinator before in the NFL. I think he was in college at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but like you said, the ability to bring in a guy who's like really focused on the run game, especially coming from the 49ers who have had
Mhm.
such a successful run game over the past couple of years is great. And the other thing that I really like about Brian Fleury is he's a tight ends coach. That's a guy who every single day is in tight end meetings, offensive line meetings, like, and he knows that through and through because tight ends are sometimes just an extension of the offensive line.
Yeah.
And so they have the same assignments, they got to worry about the same things. And I think that he's really got a handle on what his play style wants to be. Um, and I think his playbook's going to be really well balanced between the run and the pass, like we saw with Clint Kubiak last
Mm-hmm.
year, where it was a really good mix of running on early downs, sometimes passing on early downs, but really when you need 4 or 5 yards, you're running that thing and you're going to get it. And the one, like, I don't think anybody really saw this hire coming because he wasn't a big name in any sort of coordinator
No.
pools around the league. But the one thing that really stood out to me about the hire is throughout this process for hiring an offensive coordinator, Seattle had, I think it was 3 in-house candidates that had interviewed, and it just felt like one of them was going to get it. And there was a couple days of nothing where you didn't hear any hiring or anything like that. And you're kind of sitting there wondering, like, what are they doing? And then all of a sudden, one last interview comes out with Brian Fleury.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you can have 3 in-house candidates that have produced a good offense behind Clint Kubiak, and they've been on the staff for years. Like, one name that comes to mind is Jake Peets. He's our passing game
Yeah.
coordinator. I felt like he was going to get the job just because Sam Darnold had a great year. They had a great offense. The last couple of years, even with Chino, like, it really wasn't that bad.
No, the passing game was always fairly solid.
Yeah. And for a guy to come in who's completely unknown and get the job tells me that he blew them away
Yeah.
in the process of him being interviewed and that he had all the answers to all their questions and really, like, impressed them enough to say goodbye to their 3 in-house candidates and pick him, which really excites me. Because now I know this is like not a great comparison, but Sean McVay was once a tight ends coach, and he
Yeah.
got hired as the Rams head coach from Washington when he was the offensive coordinator, when he had previously been with Washington and Atlanta as a tight ends coach. And so those kind of guys who understand that those little nuances of the game with the offensive line and really building a system that depends on them and the quarterback to be good and then everything else is fruitful because of it, I think they have a really good track record. And I'm really excited about this. And the way he talks about his scheme and the way he views football in interviews is really quite impressive. And now I get those are just words, and he's going to be, not hyping himself up, but like putting his best out
Yeah.
there. It seems like he really believes it, and that's what he's going to go in that building and just like hammer it in. And I think it's going to be a good offense this year. Do I think it's going to be on par with Clint Kubiak? Yes, actually.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a pretty good offense. Now, granted, like we saw at the beginning of the season this year, there's going to be some bumps here and there. Like week 1 wasn't great. Week 2, not great offense. We really relied on our special teams and defense to hold us in that Steelers game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think once you work out those sort of like kinks, maybe by like week 4, week 5, I think they're going to be humming.
Yeah. I mean, week 3 they put up 45 or something
They
against
did.
the Saints.
They did.
So hopefully that happens again this year. The schedule is a bit harder, but
Yeah, that's true.
I'm excited for it. I've been fairly neutral. You've got me excited. I like it exactly for like what you said, the Shanahan connection, the run game stuff. I think is a great point. I mean, just having, especially with how the NFL is moving these last few years, the run game is becoming more and more of the focal point of every offense around the league. So having a guy who knows it inside and out. You do add guys like Jadarian Price, maybe for that reason. I mean, lots of teams you saw the 13 personnel work well for the Rams last season, and teams drafted like 2 tight ends in this year's draft. So you're seeing some of those shifts, so it could be that as well. But I like having a guy going in, focusing on the run game, because I think you saw how that worked exceptionally well for Seattle down the stretch. Like you look at the Rams game, I mean, in week 16, Kenneth Walker coming out of the half has like a 45-yard touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
That really, in a lot of ways, changed the tide of that game. In the playoffs, obviously, Kenneth Walker was amazing.
Unreal.
He had like 400 yards or something over 3 games. And then, I mean, you going into this next season, I think the other thing about it is Sam Darnold while he was good last season, he also led the league in turnover worthy plays. I think he had a good chunk of interceptions and turnovers as well, especially down the stretch. And I think that the run game at times struggled last season to get going. And having a guy where that's the focus, you want to take that pressure off Sam Darnold because Sam Darnold, we know, cannot be a franchise quarterback. He's just not a franchise quarterback. He can be very productive in offenses that support him, have a good supporting cast, and do not rely on him to make plays out of structure. But very often, he did do it a couple times in the Super Bowl, even. But he is not a franchise level quarterback, I would say. And that's why you want to focus on the run game and take that pressure off Sam Darnold. You make those boxes heavier. You open up room downfield for guys like Rashid Shaheed, for example. So I like it from that perspective. Obviously, he's an unknown guy, but I mean, there wasn't really anyone I was that like excited about going into Seattle's coaching search. So
No.
I mean, I think it's an interesting hire. I can't say I know much about the guy, but I feel good going into the off season. Just gotta hope he stays for more than a year.
Yeah, I hope so too. And like the last thing I have to say about him, and I know I already kind of touched on this, on the fact of him being a tight ends coach, but he coached. I think he's been with the Niners for 2 or 3 years at least now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're around a guy like George Kittle every day, who is an amazing
Yeah,
football player and has the production that he has, like some of that has got to be tied to Brian Fleury because he's the guy's coach, right? So like he's obviously now George Kittle is an incredibly talented player,
yeah,
like by himself, but you got to be able to put guys like that in positions to be able to succeed and get that production. And so that makes me really excited for my guy AJ Barner.
and Elijah Arroyo, to be
Yes, a
honest.
guy who's a little bit quicker, who's not so much of a blocking tight end, was a receiving tight end in college, and you pair him up with AJ Barner, who's more of that kind of 5 to 10 yard
Love that
route
guy.
guy, who's like, now yes, he had a couple deep routes like in the game against Jacksonville when he went for 61 yards in the game in Week 16. And even the Super Bowl, he kind of ran the same route where he caught touchdown in the corner of the
Yeah,
end zone, 20 yards down the field. But he doesn't do that so often. He's kind of that underneath guy who I think is really going to benefit from Brian Fleury's system, which makes me really excited because if you can get the tight ends more incorporated and focus on the running game, what's that going to do for JSN and Rashid Shaheed?
yeah,
That is going to make their lives so much easier. And with the natural talent that both of those guys have, they're going to both have great years.
exactly. I think it's exciting. I feel like I've been I've been very, I don't know if pessimistic is the right word, but a little nervous about the Seahawks this offseason, but really does feel like they still have the core together. The offense is at least built to be as good as it was last season. The defense, I mean, you trust Mike McDonald. It's a lot of losses while other teams got better, but we'll get to that in a bit here. Other offseason moves, I mean, we don't really have to touch on this. We love it. 4 years, $170 million for JSN.
Love it.
The question here is they have not signed Devin Witherspoon to an extension yet, who will probably get somewhere north of $100 million himself, who is from the same draft year. So you're expecting that contract to come down the pipeline. I feel like a lot of people were expecting it this summer. I'm hoping for it still this summer just
I
because
think
that's
it's
a
going to happen.
guy you want to lock up long term, but not yet.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen sometime before the season starts, whether it be late July or August when they're in the midst of training camp.
Yeah.
Um, Now, we don't know obviously what's going on with that contract negotiation, but it is likely just that they're not on the same price point. Maybe Seattle wants him a little bit cheaper, and Devin Witherspoon is saying, "Hey, I'm like crazy good," which is a fact.
He's going to get
He's gonna get a lot of
top
money.
5 cornerback money, I think,
Yeah,
without a doubt.
like I don't really have too much to say about it because I really do think it's gonna get done.
There hasn't been that much news about it either. Like, it's not been
No,
like some sort of dramatic situation like the Baker Mayfield contract or anything, but you expect to get it done, especially because JSN, same draft year.
yeah, and like I know this doesn't play a part into the football on the field per se, but JSN and Devin Witherspoon are great friends from what I've seen.
Mm.
They're always hanging out together. Like when they won the Super Bowl, they ran down the field like arm in arm, just them two. Like
Yeah.
you can tell they're good buddies. And so like to have a guy like that in the locker room, who's friends with his teammates, gets along with like everybody else on the roster. Like that may not translate directly to stats or winning Super Bowls, but that brings up team morale. It like makes everybody like happy to come into work every day
Mm-hmm.
because you're like it's almost like you're going to work and seeing your friends,
Exactly.
right? So I think that's really valuable and like can help guys buy in to what they're doing in the or with the coaching staff and what they're teaching the guys. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. It's gonna get done.
Please, please, John Schneider,
John Schneider, if you can hear me,
do it.
please.
What else here? Jody Allen has put the team up for sale.
Yes.
The first round of bids are in. That's an exciting piece of news. Don't really think it will have any impact on the team overall going into next season. If anything, they'll just want to, like, whoever comes in next will probably have a lot more money than Jody Allen and want to spend it. That seems to be what happens with the new owners. But first round of bids came in yesterday, so hopefully we'll see what happens.
I actually have an update on that.
Oh, okay.
As I was walking up to your house today, I was scrolling through Instagram stories and I follow like 15 Seahawks news pages. And one of them had gotten a report. Now, I can't remember who this report was from, but I do remember seeing the name and knowing that it was a credible source. That she rejected all of the bids today. And that for now, at least, she will continue owning the team because she rejected every single bid that was there.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I mean, I was kind of surprised that she sold it or was planning on selling it. Maybe she was just seeing what was out there, but
yeah,
because it was understandable from both sides. You know, you win the Super Bowl, your team's at the most valuable point, good time to sell, but also you just won the Super Bowl. Why the hell would you sell your team?
That's true. That's true. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's part of Paul Allen's will is to sell the team at some point.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that's why. And it does make sense from the perspective of you just won a Super Bowl. We're going to be worth probably $3 billion more than we were at the beginning of the season. Like, why not? But so I think that's why she put the team up for sale. Because I mean, how can you not honor the man's will?
Exactly.
But I was surprised, like an hour ago, to see that she had rejected all the bids. I'm not super mad about it. She's a great owner, and like she's had a lot of success with.
It is pretty wild,
like owning this team. But I was like kind of almost excited to see who's gonna own it next. But I guess we'll have to wait a little bit longer and see.
Honestly, don't even know who is in the running. I mean, obviously Amazon's a Seattle-based company, so that's someone you assume will be there, but who knows? I mean, it could also. I want to say it was like the Celtics, ownership group or something.
Was it an ex-Celtics owner or a current Celtics owner?
I want to say it was like that. Whatever ownership group owns the Celtics was interested in it. So I don't know. I mean, the Celtics are a very well-run franchise, so you would not necessarily be mad at that if you're Seattle. But at the same time, keeping things how they are, I feel like at this point is not something you would be mad at.
No.
All right, let's move on to next season, Tyler. We've talked a lot about their off season and maybe what they'll look like going into the season, but let's take a step back and look at this team as a whole. Their strength of schedule, third highest in the league. They have 11 games against playoff teams from last season out of 17 games, so well over half. 6 primetime games. That's just kind of fun stat. Doesn't actually really matter that much. And then an over-under win total from Vegas of 10.5 games. So they're in a tough division. We kind of talked about that, I think, at the start of this episode where, I mean, San Francisco's still, or no, that actually I think was before we started recording. But
it was.
San Francisco has they're getting their guys back. They're going to be a tough team to play. The Rams obviously add Myles Garrett and Trey McDuffie. They're going to be a tough team to play. So the divisional games are not going to be easy wins for this team, and then just a harder schedule overall. 10.5 wins, Tyler. Is that high or low?
That is low. I'm taking the over.
I'm inclined to as well. I feel like 11 feels right, which is, to be fair to Vegas, that's right over, but they just less than 11 wins, I feel like, would be surprising for this Seahawks team because, I mean, I just feel like they're being overlooked. Well, yes, I think the Rams personally will win this division. They've added too many pieces. They were already damn good, and they basically just added. Well, they fixed their biggest need and then added the best defensive player in football.
Which is, oh man.
So frustrating. So very frustrating. But outside of that, they're still going to be competitive with the Rams. I think they're definitely still a team who could beat the Rams in the regular season at some point. So you split a game, and there's not a lot of teams, I would say, that are better than Seattle. You have the Broncos, I think, will be a really tough game for them, but I think they're better than the Patriots.
Yep.
I would say they're better than the Chargers, some of these teams. The 49ers, they're probably better than. It's a bit closer, though, I would say. So they're in that upper echelon still, and I think that they're going to get to that 11-win mark at least.
Yeah. Before we started recording, I told you I think they're going to get 12 wins.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go 12-5. I think 5 games to drop is a respectable amount.
12-5 is a damn good team.
It is a good team, and the beginning of their season, I'm looking at their schedule right now. I like their first. I think I said 5 games. Yeah, their first 5 games I really like. Kind of as like almost like a confidence booster if you can get through these teams, because like you could end up 4-1, 3-2, something like that. Like they started the season this year 3-2, I'm pretty sure. So, or was it 3-2? I can't remember.
I think it was 3-2.
But like week 1 against the Patriots,
or 4-1.
I like that game. Week 2 against the Cardinals. I'm sorry, Cardinals fans.
They're poo poo. That's what I wrote literally in our docs. I just put the Cardinals poo poo.
That's a great way to describe them. Week 3 against the Commanders. I like that game.
I also, probably a win. Should be a win.
Week 4 against the Chargers. I love Justin Herbert, but I like that game.
That's more of a coin toss, but you still expect. That's definitely their probably toughest. Maybe the Patriots. Them and the Patriots are tougher games.
And then from weeks 5, 6, and 7, I feel like is when the real test starts, because in week 5 they have the 49ers, and yes, they're at home for that game, but
tough divisional
as
game.
much as I
regardless.
hate the 49ers with every bone in my body, I cannot stand them. I have to give them their respect.
Yeah.
They're a good team. They will always be a good team. Well, until Kyle Shanahan goes away, please.
And also all their players retire.
Or get hurt. And then week 6 against the Broncos in Mile High. That's going to be a tough game. And then week 7 against the Chiefs. Now, like, yes, the Chiefs aren't what they once were a couple years ago, but they're still a good football team. They have Kenneth Walker now.
It's also late enough in the season that Mahomes is probably going to be back.
Yes. And then week 8 against the Bears. Like, that's a tough stretch of games. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being a little too optimistic because I'm just such a big Seahawks fan. And I always have faith in them. But I think 12 wins, if you drop a game here or there, maybe you drop one of the Rams games and you maybe lose to the Bears on Monday night. Like, I'm not going to be super upset about that because those are really good teams. But I think the Seahawks are good enough this year to, just like they did last year, just when it comes to a team that's not as good as you, just take care of them.
Exactly. And I think that they've built the structure to do that. Their defense is good enough, it keeps them in games, and then their offense last year at least was good enough to blow out bad opponents. And I think at this point the one thing frankly 10 wins is a disappointment for this team. So if they win 10 wins and are below that number, that I feel like is a disappointing season. Even if they make the playoffs at 10 wins, I think that's a disappointing season.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too happy.
11 feels like the threshold. 12 is the goal, I would say. And regardless of if, like, obviously winning their division would be huge, but the Rams do feel like a powerhouse. So I feel like you're anticipating they're a wild card team, but you expect them to be like the 5 seed, not the 7th seed, who kind of got lucky with 10 wins to even get into the playoffs. So they do have a tough schedule, but I think they're built to achieve it because the coaching staff's in place, and I think they've got the guys. You know, you definitely lost some pieces that are concerning, but I don't know. You just got to believe.
Yeah.
Believe in the system.
When you, like, I know Cooper Kupp has said this once before in an interview, I think it was on Fred Warner's podcast, that when you have experience knowing what it takes to win a Super Bowl, and like what you have to do, and like the amount of grinding that it takes in practice every single day, it helps you to like get over that. Because sometimes if you haven't reached a Super Bowl ever or in a long time, and you're kind of like losing to a bad opponent here or there, it can maybe get in your head, and you kind of maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say not try so hard in practice, but I know when I played, sometimes when that happened, you kind of get to you a little bit, and you
Yeah.
be like, man, like maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. But when you know that you can do it, you have done it, you know what it takes, the process has been laid out for you before, and you followed it to a T, and it has produced what you wanted. I feel like the guys that they have will be bought in enough still to, even when something like that happens, like let's say they were to drop a game to the Cardinals, which would break my heart.
Please don't.
I feel like the next week all they would want to do is come and just blow them out.
Yeah.
Because it's like that is not us. Like that
Yeah.
is not what we do. That was, you know, not a good example of our football team, and we need to come out here and like actually show like what we do, because that's like their brand of football.
Exactly. Very well said. That seems like a good place to end the episode. I will end it on this. MOB. Motivation over bullshit. That's all. That's all Seattle needs to focus on going into this next season, and it feels more important than ever. But Tyler, thank you very much for coming on today. It was an absolute blast to chop it up about Seattle. I feel better. I feel reassured, to be honest.
Good.
Talking it through. I cannot wait for the season to start. We're not that far away.
Nope.
At the end of the day, we've got what? It's got to be like what, 60 days, something like
under
that.
70 for sure.
That's close, man. And the summer's always busy. It'll fly by. So got our
absolutely
lots
we got training
coming.
camp coming up. That'll take up some time because that's at least something to keep up with. And then in the meantime, before you know it, boom.
Yeah, fantasy football. You got to prep for that as well. So lots to keep us busy. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the Ball Watchers podcast. We will be back next week with another episode. Joseph will be back in the studio for next week, so make sure you tune in there. And, yeah, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Ball Watchers Pod, TikTok at Ball Watchers Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube at Ball Watchers. We live stream every episode over there. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Stay up, Ball Watchers.